Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Advocates with Steven Soos. We're joined today by my friend Albert Witteveen. He's the second Niagara Regional Councillor to come on the show. We had a great segment with Wayne Olson. Albert Witteveen is the Niagara Regional Councillor for West Lincoln, however, and he's also a farmer. So, Councillor Witteveen, I'm just going to ask you to start by introducing yourself.
Well, as Stephen said, I'm Albert Witteveen. I'm a counselor here, my second term in West Lincoln, and representing the people, and enjoying the term, and working with Stephen on his advocacy piece, and helping him help those that basically that's what counselors are called to do, is to help those in their community that rely on them to make good decisions on their behalf. So,
Certainly. So I want to start off by talking about the state of emergency for mental health, addiction, homelessness, and housing. So the state of emergency was declared in 2023 at the Niagara region. Are you satisfied with the work that has been done on the state of emergency, or do you think that the region could do more on this file?
well, thanks for the question, Stephen, and definitely, in that declaration of state of emergency, we wanted to do that to emphasize the challenges that we have in our communities, and to bring light to the province, and request their support through that mechanism. And I think, as you asked, Stephen, am I satisfied with what we're doing? And first of all, I think we were on the right track here in Niagara, but this really, I guess, emphasized some of the gaps in some of our programs. So with declaring a state of emergency, we did a full house review of the services we provide, and seeing if we can enhance those programs, and find where there's gaps, and so through that, I would say that was probably the main driving factor for us to lobby the province to receive funding through the HEART initiative, which is homelessness, addiction, and recovery treatment. And so we were promised by the province for just under $19 million over 3 years, to look at programs to help those that fell out of the categories, we'll say, or programs that we already had in place, and to really focus on those that were experiencing chronic homelessness in our community. So, I think, yes, Stephen, it brought to light that we can still do a better job, and there are still people that we needed to help, that we weren't in the current existing programs that we had in place.
Thanks for the answer. That's actually very informative for the viewers because people talk to me about the state of emergency all the time, and they want to make sure that the region is holding true to their promise to deliver for Niagara region's most vulnerable populations. But you've been a local proponent of that advocacy for addictions, mental health, and housing because you asked recently for a report on addictions capacity in the Niagara region. What was the result of that report, and were you satisfied with its findings?
So on that, I would say, Stephen, that I did not at this point receive, I guess we'll call it a full report of our, services that we provide. I know that, speaking with yourself and others, that, the having the capacity for recovery, and the right services, what does help in our outcome. So we just don't want to provide a service and have low success rates. So to me, it was, first of all, what is our capacity? What is our success rate in that system? And can we do things better to basically put our effort forward and achieve better outcomes for those that that are receiving services from the program.
Perfect. Thanks for that. And I do mention in terms of addictions that we only have one treatment center, and that's Newport, which is moving to the Welland Hospital. And in 2023, I believe, Premier Doug Ford came down to St. Catharines and he promised treatment centers because these people are being subject to a life on the dangerous streets. So, how can we achieve this, Councillor Witteveen? I know that you and Joyce Morocco recently moved a motion for more provincial funding for mental health and addictions, but what more can we do to realize the dream of Niagara getting more treatment spaces?
So with that, Stephen, is while we wait for the region to come up with this report, we are meeting with our ministers in August here, about the middle of August in Ottawa, and we do have delegations with the health minister on just what we're talking about. So I think it's again, our counselors, our advocacy piece to reinforce the importance of this, service to our community, to help. We can have the best of everything else, but if I feel, and I think you agree with me, is to give people a place to get a fresh start and then do the wraparound services. So, so that we'll be going full steam ahead, advocating, and I believe, I would say that, our staff is advocating, but they also need, basically political action at the same time. So it's coming on all fronts, and I'm sure, Stephen, we and other communities, experience the same challenges. So the minister, I'm sure the minister will hear this repeatedly throughout her delegations, that this, these services need to be supported, and of course, obviously, we rely on the province to fund these services for us, because they are obviously in charge of public health, and we are the administrators of their programs. So
I must say, I know that the region's doing everything in terms of advocacy to secure the Heart Hub program and money, but I must also say that I'm disappointed that it's not up and running yet. And I'm sure that you and several other regional councillors share that disappointment. So I want to move into another subject that's related to these complex social issues, but it's more localized. So you represent West Lincoln, which is the newest seat on Niagara Regional Council. They allocated that extra seat to the council because of anticipated population growth in West Lincoln. So with West Lincoln, there has been big talk about transportation gaps to the services. So my question to you is, how can we better address those transportation gaps? And is there a greater need to get services in the backyard instead of shipping people to another municipality?
well, no, that's a fair enough question, Stephen, and in speaking with our Mayor Ganan, as she has the same heart for our community as we do here. We look at those things, and we have West Lincoln Community Care as a center for those, but that's for their more, providing food, rent assistance, utility assistance. But we also, in our community, I know that we have certain individuals that offer of counseling services in our community, and I think that's really shows that, we see that transporting individuals, or to different communities for these services, that we really need these services in our community for everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody knows, or everybody knows somebody that could use some of those services, whether it's counseling or just um, so those are services that are happening in our community. Is that enough? Probably not, but it's a step in the right direction. I think, from my own perspective in our own community, we really work hard at making sure that people are housed and that they're treated with dignity, and they can, we would rather spend our energy as a community to keep our 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 citizens in their current homes, so they can feel safe, and then so they can deal with the challenges that they have. So from that perspective, we're a rural community. It's a lot of things happen in our community are also hidden. It's not visible and maybe as in other communities, but we are not without the same challenges as every other community in Niagara. But we're handling it as a community, and working with our partners in Grimsby and Lincoln as a West Niagara, and sharing services to our citizens. So I think that, it's never perfect. It can always be improved, but we have a real good heart in our community to help those that need that, hand up and leg up. So I feel good about it, and it's just yeah, it's it's never perfect, but it's something that we continuously work at and look for ways to improve how we do things.
I must say, I'm proud of the work that West Lincoln Council has done on the file of the state of emergency. I mean, they supported the call to the region to declare after the region refused multiple times. And that was the fight that Wayne Campbell and I fought so hard. We went on CHCH News and we got the job done. And it was people like you who were vocal about the miscarriage of justice that happened with the state of emergency motion. So I thank you for that. But going to the local council in West Lincoln, I mean, they've done a lot as well. They've asked the provincial government to change the homelessness funding formula, and that was supported by Sam Osterhoff after the council passed that resolution. And that got the funding formula changed because Hamilton was getting double the money as Niagara was getting for homelessness for virtually the same population. So that was a big discrepancy that needed to be cleared up. And as a result of that, along with the state of emergency and the other advocacy of Niagara Regional Council and the local municipalities, as a collaborative unit, we were able to secure $20.8 million for homelessness prevention in the region. That's something to be extremely proud of. So I want to move on to, I still want to stay on the topic of mental health, addictions, housing, and homelessness. So I have another quick fire question on the subject of these issues. So with these issues in the farming community, what are the challenges for farmers with these issues? And what have you done to advocate for the farmers in terms of getting them the support that they need on the issues?
Well, good question, and thanks for that, Stephen. As that's that's dear to my heart as a farmer, and many farmers you know are under undue pressure, whether finances, family constraints, and so so the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, I would say at least 5+ years ago, realized the challenges in their own communities and started the conversation. And that's, I've been involved in that, and it's about having those conversations, and I think that's the first step. And so with the local level, which is the Niagara Federation of Agriculture and the Ontario Federation, they have given us resources, and they have also come out and educated us and had workshops on how to reach out. So we've done a number of outreach initiatives from the Federation of Agriculture. We have about 1,600 farmers here in Niagara, and through sending out literature, the call lines, who they can call, who they can, just talk to somebody and get the help they need. So we as an agriculture community recognize that we have the same challenges as people in the general population, but we have the unique challenges of being more isolated, working on your farm, different challenges, like I said, weather, just equipment breakdown, just long days, planting, harvesting, and so it does take its toll on there, and we recognize that we need to protect the asset, which is the people, the farmers, so that we can all enjoy the work that they do through our 2 or 3 meals a day that we enjoy. So it's something I'm really happy for. I think just having that conversation, getting rid of the stigma of saying, oh, like I'm having challenges here, that people see that as something that's serious, but also giving them the tools to know how to reach out to that person. And it's mostly, a lot of times it could be feed salesmen, people delivering to the farm. They're the ones that are trained, because they're going to notice if something's out of sorts, and then offer that farmer, that individual, resources, for help. So thank you for that question, Stephen. And yes, we have that. We're working hard. It's and learning as we go as well.
There's certainly a lot of challenges to farming. So I appreciate the motion a few years back, myself and Renee Delaney bringing it forward for food insecurity and exploring new markets for local food. And that was all good work that was done through the Agricultural Policy Action Committee. But in terms of the regulation with farming, first of all, it's getting harder and harder because of inflation and finances for families to pass on their farms to the next generation. And I know the government is looking into strategies to employ that help those farmers keep the family farm in the family. But of course, larger farming takes over and the family farm often gets forgotten about. And with that regulation, there's a lot of challenges, as I mentioned as well. I mean, you have a great amount of biosecurity that needs to be done and implemented. When you have cows, they all have to be tagged properly. So these are challenges. And you mentioned weather as another challenge. And then on top of that, I also advocated in my food insecurity motions that GMOs be mandatory labeled. So what's your opinion on mandatory labeling for GMOs? Because do you see it as a matter of consumer choice, or do you think that they shouldn't be labeled at all?
Well, I think, consumers should know what they're purchasing. No different if it's any other products that you may want to purchase. I think it should be labeled correctly, so that you can read that label and make your choice, whether that's where you want to spend your dollars. And I think it's important to do that. I don't make a big deal about. I know, in the old days we called that hybridization, where you took, good traits of different plants, and you made a better plant. And I know genetically modified, it may be a more scientific product, but with that, it helps produce a crop that it may be resistance to challenges, insect challenge, or mold issues. And so it also helps not to be negative about GMO, it has a place in the toolbox for farmers to plant a crop and but also to supply food to the marketplace. And I think when we buy land and we buy equipment and we plant a crop, we would also like to have some predictability of being able to manage that crop and harvest it so that through the sale of that crop then we can then pay for our expenses and make a living. So it would be a farmer choice. And I think that's important that it may be supported by some and not by others, but it is there for those that choose if they feel that that's the way they need to make a living and provide food to the marketplace.
For sure. And it's interesting to talk about farming practices because if you look at the old Monsanto company, which ended up changing their name, they were able to sue people based on the fact that the wind blew the seeds onto another farm. And then they would go after that farmer because of the weather on the basis of intellectual property rights. And they would get even a ruling in their favor. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and that's part of, I guess we'll call it more the corporate type farming, and it has evolved from just being able to save your own seed as a farmer, and to where that's been, it's, I think it's been more challenging. I think there's still, I know, farmers save their wheat seed and they replant that, but when it comes to soybeans and corn, um, that yeah, it's a propriety right, and they have that right. But to me, that's a bit extreme to say, well, I'm the guy downwind and I'm bearing the brunt because you planted a patented program in the pollinated mine. Like that's it's not a factory, it's not four walls. It's there's an element of nature happening out there, and whether it's animals pollinating or wind pollinating, which is very common in so I grow some hazelnuts, and so they have pollen pods, and it takes wind for them to pollinate. So it shows you I guess the shift from the ownership of some of that seed, where corporations will kind of muscle themselves and not maybe look at it in a practical sense. It wasn't intentional. If something like that is incidental, then they shouldn't walk around with a big stick, knowing that the farmer's not growing a crop in four walls with a roof and can control that. So, yeah, those things need to be they challenged and hashed out in the marketplace. But farmers are also supportive of that technology, Stephen, for the simple fact that it's proven. It has a, we want to we want to feed the world, so we're always looking at it better ways to do it, and that's a tool in the box. And if we can produce more per acre for the marketplace, then I think that's and there will probably be a profit. There's profit's not really a dirty word. There's profit margin in it, but it also puts more food and keeps the cost of food affordable for everybody. And I think sometimes people have to realize if we go back to the old way of doing things, the cost of food will also increase because of labor and less yield. And so farmers understand that they have a call of duty to help feed everybody at a we'll say at an affordable price. I know in North America we are probably the cheapest fed people on the planet, and there's a reason for that. It just doesn't it happen on its own, and I think that's sometimes the success that has to be shared as well. You know.
Well, and genetic modification does help with the yields and that cloning process. So it can be more cost effective and efficient for the farmer. That's for sure. So, of course, there's pros and cons to the genetically modified organisms. I'm not going to deny that. So, in terms of supply management, and especially for dairy farmers, are you in favor of supply management or against supply management, and why?
Oh, I guess I would, say as a past poultry farmer, I I would say that I'm supportive of a system that started in the, I guess it would be the late 60s as you call it supply management. I call it an orderly market system where, um, where farmers, through their boards, fill a market. They don't, they don't oversupply it. They don't undersupply it. It should be supplied just right. And with that, Stephen, also comes responsibility of heavier regulations, as you stated, biosecurity, but just the whole production method of supply management is tightly, we'll say, regulated or documented. So, and with that, it ensures the consumer that they're getting, a safe, consumable product and traceable. I think that's, we all look at, there's a problem, how do we trace it back to its origin? And so with supply management, they work off a cost of production, which is land, buildings, borrowing cost, and a labor cost, and that allows, I would say, the benefit or the good thing about that, Stephen, is being that it's heavily capitalized, you need the support from the lending institutions. So when the banks feel that it's a good system and they can lend money and they know that the farmer is getting a rate of return, they will also help those farmers expand into the marketplace. And there's also with supply management, I think a lot of people don't realize that there's about a 8 to 9% of what the national grows comes in from other countries. So it's not an entirely closed system. It's a protected system, but that's so that we're getting good, clean, healthy food. But like in poultry, 8% can come from the States or can come from Brazil or other places, to fill the gaps if the demand increases. And so the processors are the ones that have that ability to do that. Not as a farmer, you don't have the ability to bring in chicken because we're selling live animals to a processor. So the processor has that ability to bring in product out of country, to fill, if it's for the restaurant, if it's chicken wings, there's a special whatever and the market can't fill that. So same with eggs, same with turkey, the whole feather industry, even hatchable eggs that go into the meat birds, eggs, chicks come. So I think over and all, Stephen, it's been a really, I guess, what do you say? What's the best thing about supply management? And it's allowed a lot of family farms, and as you talked, as something that's generational. If we're seeing that happen now, I think we're in a kind of third generation transfer, because it's something that can be supported by the bank. It's seen as, a good business plan to be in. Then you're seeing young people, also investing for the long term. So I think over and all, it serves its purpose. It does well. What the future brings is yet to be determined, and that could be political. It could be within. But you asked me about supply management, and I could share, I guess, my knowledge with you on, what do I see as good? And I think it's the fact that if you drive around, you see lots of family farms in your communities spending money, sending kids to school, going to soccer, like, So they are also community builders versus large corporate farms that may not support the community in the same way.
And I worked on some family farms during my time in West Lincoln. Of course, I lived there for a short time. And I think rural recovery in terms of addictions and mental health and those issues is the best recovery. I'm actually a vocal proponent of getting the homeless shelter in Welland due to the issues in the neighborhood, getting it moved to a rural location to better support the people in need. And I really appreciate the dialogue on supply management. I mean, when I worked on a farm, there was a farmer and he said, even when you pick up the weeds, you have to dispose of them properly because it could open me up to a plethora of complaints if that ends up in somebody else's backyard or farm. And of course, with the regulation issue, there's certain industries in farming that are more heavily regulated than others. I mean, you look at one that has a little less regulation, and that's the quail farm, of course. So, there's definitely challenges in every sector. So I'm glad we got to have a conversation about farming because it's your second love, maybe your first love aside from politics. So that's great. I want to move into the area of crime prevention. We have about 7 minutes left because Zoom likes to time me out, and I refuse to pay them to have more time. So, with crime prevention, the Niagara Regional Police Chief, Bill Forty, who I view as a very good chief and as a change maker to policing, he got the community watch on the regional agenda, and he's waiting for a report back from NRP to see if they want to implement the community watch like York and Durham do. But of course, every region does the community watch different. So, my question is, what is the type of action that you want taken on the community watch program? Should it be reviewed? Should it be referred to the budget committee? Should it be voted on by regional council right then and there? Should it be moved to public health and social services? All of the committees? What is your take on the community watch program?
Well, so being that I'm waiting for the report and that I'm going to kind of talk probably a little more high level because I don't have the details and can't get into the weeds on it, Stephen. But I think it's obviously it's a good program. I think, as people living in the community, we have a responsibility to be engaged in our community, and I think this puts that focus back on is that we just say, well, look at them doing that. Let's pick up the phone and call the police. I think as a community, we can go and find out, what is that behavior? Why? Watch out for each other. And I think it's kind of, maybe we've gone away from always making that phone call, but I still think if we need to take that responsibility and how that happens is maybe we just need advocates in our communities to help us understand what our rights are, what we can do, what we can't do, and then as we'll say as a last resort to engage with our police officers as we can't do this now, we need your help. But I think we all have a responsibility in some ways, so that we can enjoy the safety of our community and to keep it that way. I kind of see some of that through a bit of social media. Everybody kind of has their doorbell cameras, and when they see people at 2 a.m. going around checking to see if your vehicle's locked or unlocked, I think sharing that, creating awareness, I think that's a good place to start, is to let people know to be alert, to watch out, to put things away. And so from a policing standpoint, they can't do it. We can't have a police officer on every corner because we just can't afford that. So I think honestly, we as a community need to take ownership of a portion of creating safe communities. And I think we talked about that, Stephen, about the community watch and just having that conversation in the community. I think communication's huge, and that to me is hopefully where they're going to go versus make it another a large expenditure, and hire more people. And I don't know what it will be based on the results that we're trying to achieve. And I think the greatest results that can be achieved is by the community itself.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer. And we have about 3 minutes left. So, very quickly, and I know the issue deserves more attention, but once again, it's me versus Zoom, and I am not going to pay them. So, my last question is on human trafficking. Niagara Region, and it's related to crime prevention. Niagara Region would like to develop a code of conduct on human trafficking. Do you think that this is an appropriate move, or what more do you want to see done very quickly? What more do you want to see done on the issue of human trafficking?
Oh, wow, Stephen, that's a big one because I know, we have some of our own unique challenges being Niagara Falls, a tourist hub, hotels, and I think, the first, I guess, call it the first responder people are the people that work, in those settings to see if that's going on. I think it's a huge challenge for us. But I mean, we already did something where if somebody decided that they wanted to get out of human, could break away, that we would give them a safe place. But I think we're just barely scratching the surface on that. It's going to take a lot of people, a lot of resources to um, just try and get a handle on this. It's just sorry to say, but it's just a really big challenge, and I'm just not really sure, you know, where we're going to get our biggest impact. But we have to start somewhere, and I think that's the place to start is where frontline workers can observe, and then we can then, I guess, understand what the challenges are, and then set a plan of action. So step by step, Stephen, step by step.
Absolutely. And it's a disgusting crime. And there's a very large corridor between Niagara and Toronto for human trafficking. And something needs to be done. People need to recognize the signs, and they need to take action on it by reporting it immediately. And it's very good that Niagara Region is at least looking into the issue, because it remains, as a border community, one of Niagara's biggest challenges. And we'll have more to say on it, folks, when Joyce Morocco joins the show. So I have about 50 seconds, so I got to wrap it up. Unfortunately, I would love to talk to Albert Witteveen all day long about all kinds of things. We will have you on the show again. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Albert Witteveen. He is the West Lincoln Niagara Regional Councillor, and he's a farmer. So we had a lot of great conversation. Albert, thanks for joining us today, and we'll get this up and posted. And I encourage my viewers to like, comment, share, or possibly scream at Albert and I if they choose to do so. Thank you, Albert.
Thanks for having me on this afternoon, Stephen.
Take care.
Have a